Now, this is a thing about BTC. They have this hodl mentality.
Yeah.
They're like, buy hodl, sit back, wait for it, guys. Halving, 2020 halving.
Yeah, logically, 2020 halving. Logically, it doesn't make sense. If we're all buying hodl, then what?
Yes. Oh, we're holding.
Yeah.
Don't sell. Don't sell. Don't use.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Craig Wright here, and welcome to Africa's #1 technology podcast, and that is the Grey Avenue podcast. And let me start off with a reminder, as usual, that you can find this podcast on all podcasting platforms, from Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, and whatever there is. I think Google Play as well, we're there. So that makes your listening experience a lot more easier if you go and find us on those platforms. All you have to do there is type my name, Craig Wright, or you can just type the Grey Ave podcast. You should be able to find me over there. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at Grey BTC, Grey with an E, and then BTC, Grey BTC. Today we have an exciting guest, someone I've been looking forward to have on this podcast for a very long time, and it finally happened, and that is Lorien Gamaroff. Lorien is the founder and CEO of Bankymoon, a blockchain and cryptocurrency consultancy, and co-founder and CEO of Centbee, a cryptocurrency payments and remittance company. Right, so before I continue, I just want to give you some heads up that I have Lorien had good things to say about BSV. He shifted from being pro Bitcoin after the fork. He became pro Bitcoin SV, not Bitcoin BTC. So just to add some context for folks who don't really know what's going on here, there are now, I think, about 4 or 5 versions of Bitcoin. There's one that is popular. When you say Bitcoin, you're mostly referring to BTC. And there's another one called Bitcoin Cash, and there's now Bitcoin SV, and there's Bitcoin Private, and there's another Bitcoin as well. The popular one obviously being BTC, and this is because of the difference in opinions within the community of Bitcoin. There are things that needs to change over time, and there are others that agree with some improvements, and others who don't. So because Bitcoin is an open protocol, it is decentralized. Anyone pretty much have an opinion, and they can contribute, and then they can decide. So if people don't really want Bitcoin to do certain things, they can create their own Bitcoin based on the original Bitcoin. They will just copy the code, create their own consensus system, using other miners, and then they create their own Bitcoin. So when there is a difference within these protocols that are decentralized and open source, this is one of the things that happens. So imagine the dollar, the US dollar, that Americans don't agree that the US dollar shouldn't be based on gold anymore. It's not backed by gold. If other Americans say that, hey, we don't really like that version of the dollar, we're still gonna keep the dollar, but we're gonna make ours be backed by gold. So instead of just calling it the US dollar, it's going to be the US dollar gold, right? So if you believe in the US dollar gold, you're going to be using the USDG. If you believe in the USD, you're going to be using the USD, and that is the difference. So Lorien believed that Bitcoin SV, which is championed by a guy who claimed that he is the creator of Bitcoin. His name is Craig Wright. The guy who claims to be the original creator of Bitcoin, who is referred as Satoshi Nakamoto. So there is a disparity within the cryptocurrency space about the subject. So it's a very interesting and very important subject. I uploaded this on my YouTube channel, Hardcore Crypto, which is purely about cryptocurrencies. If you're really interested in that, I suppose you go subscribe and check it out. And I had mixed feelings from folks. There are folks that are super close-minded, that they don't want to hear anything different other than what they already believe in. And there are also folks that can pick anything from everything. They can pick something from everything, basically. So it was a good balance to see, but obviously there were extremes which is not really my type. I prefer to keep an open mind. So as South Africa's foremost blockchain expert, Lorien has been invited around the world to speak on digital cryptocurrencies and decentralized distributed ledgers and their benefits for emerging economies. He has addressed and advised the United Nations, IMF, World Bank, FBI, Commonwealth Secretariat, the South African Reserve Bank, Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, TEDx, and a host of professionals in multiple industries and attorney generals throughout the world. He offers insight and guidance to business executives and advises government on blockchain technologies and their implications. He pioneered blockchain payments for utility smart metering and was the co-founder of the Blockchain Academy, which educates professionals on all aspects of blockchains, from regulations to software development. So there's more to Lorien, but I think I'm just going to keep it simple for you. I think the more fun is in the conversation that we had itself. So I beg you to have an open mind to this and rather challenge the ideas or the concepts that he proposes other than just a position. So I hope you enjoy this conversation of myself and Lorien. Remember to share and subscribe. Enjoy. But anyway, let's begin there. What makes you think that Craig Wright is Satoshi?
Well, he said he is. And either he's lying, he's mad, or he's telling the truth. And when you go and look at his history and you look at the work he's doing now and the work he's done in the past, the fact that he understands Bitcoin more than anybody else, and you can go and check that. The resources that he has at his disposal, the company that he's creating, the patents that he has created around Bitcoin, the papers that he has published. To me, you have to have more faith that he's not, more faith to believe that he's not Satoshi than that he is Satoshi. To me, it's undoubtful. You can't doubt it. I think most people have that issue though, where he's not the Satoshi we imagined. A lot of people in the early days thought, well, this guy, whoever this guy is, Satoshi Nakamoto. So immediately you have this Japanese kind of character in your mind, and he seemed to be quiet, and he seemed to be also, altruistic. He just wanted to create technology that was for the world and would make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Not wanting to take credit.
It was the God version, kind of the God.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't want to take credit for Bitcoin. He didn't want to spend his Bitcoin. All those early addresses. We don't know how many addresses Satoshi had, but the very earliest ones, no coins have moved. He hasn't come out. He doesn't want fame. We thought that's the Satoshi. If ever we see Satoshi, he's going to be kind of like that. Mm-hmm. So what happens? We have this loudmouthed, obnoxious Australian businessman who not only is different in character from what we expected, but also is quite happy to patent technology. Satoshi, it seemed to be the kind of guy who was willing to create technology and give it for free to the world to use. Craig Wright creates a lot of patents. He calls out all the people in Bitcoin who are pushing this kind of be your own bank and no regulation and transactions outside of what government can see, of tax avoidance and anarchistic markets. He keeps talking against that. Roger Ver is very well known Bitcoin advocate, and he's very much in favor of anarchy. He's an anarchist.
Yeah,
he hates government.
I interviewed him before. So
yes, he hates government, and he loves things like Silk Road. He wants to free Ross. He thinks Ross is being unfairly punished for creating a market where people can just trade. And Craig Wright speaks out against that. So all the narratives around Bitcoin that we've been hearing for the last 10 years now, about all these things that I said, that this is an anarchistic tool, it's meant to disintermediate government and so on. He speaks against that. He says, no, Bitcoin should be regulated, and it is a transparent ledger, and criminals can be tracked. So he's the complete antithesis of what we expected. So we immediately doubt him.
Yeah.
We immediately say, listen, in the same way, I'm not going to believe in God until I see God write his name in the sky.
Yeah.
I'm not going to believe Craig Wright is Satoshi until I see him sign that.
Oh, but so if you create something like Bitcoin, wouldn't you expect to have real free trade on there? If you have a peer-to-peer, if you have a peer-to-peer payment system, wouldn't you expect Silk Road to happen?
Yes, trade is different. When we talk about trade, yes, of course. We want to be able to trade with each other. We want to be able to transact with each other, of course. And Bitcoin definitely makes that possible. But it doesn't make illegal activity possible. Being a transparent ledger, if you just think about what that means, it's public. So that means any transaction can be traced.
Yeah.
So if I know the identity of an address on that, I can trace the money going through that account. So this was never even possible for it to be an anonymous system. So that is a very powerful aspect of Bitcoin that a lot of people have decided to overlook. We call it pseudonymous. Pseudonymous means that it's visible, but you don't know who it is. And a lot of Bitcoin and crypto advocates are trying to push more anonymity. They think that if this thing is more anonymous, it's better. Even Lightning Network. Lightning Network is kind of anonymous because it has to get routed through all sorts of different, different nodes. So again, it's about this difference in the way we thought Satoshi should be and the ideology that we built up around it, and the actual character that is Craig Wright. So trade is certainly very much what Craig and Satoshi and people who are Bitcoin advocates are interested in. We want people to be able to pay seamlessly without going through middlemen and so on. But we don't want to, we shouldn't want things like illegal online marketplaces to exist.
All right. So I think we just jumped into this subject without proper introduction. So if you meet people at in a coffee shop, how do you introduce yourself?
I'm Lorien.
Okay, and
so basically, I'm Lorien Gamaroff. I've been involved with Bitcoin almost from the very beginning. It was late 2010, early 2011 when I first got into when I first heard about Bitcoin. I was born in Zimbabwe and I have family in Zimbabwe, and I remember in 2008 when the currency there collapsed. And so when Bitcoin came along, it was very interesting. I'm a software engineer, so I've been building technology, for banks and payment systems and energy companies for years. And at the time when I heard about it, it was very interesting because it was this online currency that you didn't need a bank or anything to work through. So at that stage, and then a few years later, I started working in an energy in a smart grid energy company, and we were trying to build vending systems for customers who didn't have access to bank accounts to be able to purchase electricity. Yeah. So what we did was, what I decided to do at that stage, because I was so interested in Bitcoin, is to create a Bitcoin payment system, and brought Bitcoin into that and created this prototype. And unfortunately, the company I was involved with at the time, they weren't so interested because at that stage, Silk Road was all very famous, and they felt like cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin was the only one really at that stage, was only for illegal markets and so on, and they weren't so keen. So I thought, well, that's it. I want to dive into this properly. I want to build solutions around Bitcoin. I really like the idea. So I founded a company called Bankymoon, which was a kind of advisory company, consulting company. I ended up doing a lot of consulting work and a lot of workshops and lots of seminars around the world with central banks, with other financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and so on. Even the FBI had a workshop with the FBI, and trying to get Bitcoin to be adopted, and trying to see how a very important thing is how we can get regulators and government to accept this thing. Because it's all right, you and me trading Bitcoin, that's one thing. But if I can go to a grocery store and buy my groceries, or pay my rent, or pay my taxes in Bitcoin, that to me is how we will get what we want. We want to get global growth. We want to get world adoption. So that's been my focus for the last, permanent focus for about 5-6 years. And then about 2.5 years ago, I was tired of this blockchain advisory. I could see, it was going very wide, all sorts of blockchains, and everybody's got different things. And at the end of the day, all I really wanted to do was build, a world with Bitcoin. And that was what I was interested in, because that's where I saw the biggest problem, money. Yeah. And what I always wanted to do was build a Bitcoin payment company, company. So I created a Centbee, which is now a Bitcoin payment ecosystem company. We have a wallet, and if you download it, I'll send you some Bitcoin.
Awesome.
And we've got we're building out merchant payment system, so you can pay your groceries. We've got vouchers, which are about to go live. So you can go to any large retailer here in South Africa, even bazaar shops where there's flash, those flash kiosks. I don't know if you've ever seen them. And you can actually take your Centbee wallet, hand over cash, and get Bitcoin directly onto your phone. You don't have to use an exchange or anything. So we're about to launch that. So this is
in what jurisdictions? That's South Africa.
South Africa. Okay. Yes, we are. Our investors are international. So we have 2 investors: Enchain, which is a Bitcoin research company, and CoinGeek now, which is a Bitcoin mining operation and media company, and they're based in Antigua actually. The founder is Canadian. So we've got international investors, and we certainly have an international view. We want to, develop technology here and take it to the world.
Yeah.
Centbee wallet is available around the world. So if you have anywhere in the world, you can use Centbee, but then it's just a Bitcoin wallet. And depending on your jurisdiction, depending on your country, we'll open up different products.
All right. But the wallet generally works everywhere, just the
wallet works everywhere. Okay. So you can be anywhere in the world. In fact, a lot of our customers are in India and US. There's a lot of interesting countries that we've got users.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like vouchers, where you are converting local currency into Bitcoin, or you're taking Bitcoin and converting it to local currency for merchants, each country has its own difficulties.
Exactly.
And South Africa is a very nice country. Part of the work that I was doing with Bankymoon was getting to know our regulators and working with the regulators, and they know myself and my co-founder Angus Brown. He was actually one of the founding members of eBucks.
Okay.
So that together we co-founded Centbee, and we are now trying to do this. And he's got a good reputation and well respected.
So both of you are from the fintech background, basically.
I'm sort of fintech, but also some advertising, digital advertising, also energy.
Yeah.
But it's certainly consulted to financial companies as well. Good.
So this is interesting. Now, so at what point did you feel like, okay, Bitcoin? What did you think was wrong with Bitcoin to the point that you are pro Bitcoin SV?
Okay, well, it's funny the way you phrased that, because I don't think anything is wrong with Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin has always worked. The way it was designed, according to the white paper, was correct. And so the irony here is that Bitcoin was changed by people who thought Bitcoin didn't work. And that's why we have Bitcoin BTC today.
Yeah.
So what we call Bitcoin today is not actually the original Bitcoin. What happened was Bitcoin split in 2017. And because there was part of the community who wanted to change Bitcoin because they felt like it didn't do what they wanted it to do. And when that split, we had 2 Bitcoins. One was called Bitcoin BTC or Bitcoin Core, and then Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin Cash was saying we're going to stick to the original rules of the white paper. And that's why I decided to adopt and use Bitcoin Cash as our Bitcoin, because that to me was the original Bitcoin. But unfortunately, that happened again, where the community was divided. Last year, Bitcoin Cash split again into Bitcoin BSV and Bitcoin BCH. And so even though it seems that, I've been somebody who's moved from one coin to the other, BSV is actually the only coin in existence today that follows the original rules of the white paper and can be called the original Bitcoin. But if I was to say that to a person who liked BTC and so on, they would say to me, it's not about the white paper. It's about what the community decides. If the community decides that this is Bitcoin, it becomes Bitcoin. So can you see now, this is now what the social media and when it comes to mainstream or how people think.
Yeah.
Because BTC was the ticker that was traded on the exchanges as Bitcoin, when it split and it became Bitcoin BTC and Bitcoin BCH, the changed version retained that BTC ticker.
Yeah.
So for the vast majority of people in the space, they think it's the original. They think BTC is how it is, how it always was. And BCH was the fork, and now BSV is the fork.
Well, what is the main fundamental change that makes BTC less of Bitcoin than BSV? Because I would say probably it's the issue with the block size increments that it's still resistant to doing that, or it's probably the issue of Lightning Network. Is there more?
Well, Lightning Network is something completely different. It's not part of Bitcoin. It's something that sits on top of Bitcoin. It's like a second protocol. It's not even, it's not part of Bitcoin at all. You can have Lightning on other cryptocurrencies, on Litecoin and so on.
Right.
So it's not that Lightning was the issue. But first of all, you're correct. One of the changes that they made was that they decided to enforce and maintain the 1 megabyte limit of how many transactions or it can go into a block. And that wasn't a part of the original plan for Bitcoin. The original plan for Bitcoin was always to have no limit on how many transactions in a block.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin BTC, that community said, no, we want to now make Bitcoin so it's possible for anybody to run a node, which just means run the full blockchain on a computer in their room. And to do that, we can't expect them to have massive hard drives. We want them to have small hard drives. So they decided to limit the block size. That was the first thing. The second thing, which is the most important, is they decided to create something called segregated witness. Now, segregated witness, one of the issues was that now, as Bitcoin became more popular, more people wanted to transact, and as more people wanted to transact, it filled up the blocks, and that means it was very expensive and very slow. And so people, the Bitcoin core community, were trying very hard to figure this out. They're saying, how can we do this without raising the block size? So one of the changes they decided to make was the way Bitcoin works is it's kind of like a checkbook. In the olden days, the check was this, piece of this book that you had from a bank, and then what you would do is you'd write in there, you'd say, to this person, I want to pay this amount of money, and you sign with your signature. And then you give that to the bank, or you give it to somebody, they take it to the bank, and they can cash out that check. So Bitcoin is kind of similar in that regard, where when you create a transaction, what you do is, if you've got some Bitcoin in your wallet, your wallet creates a transaction. It says, pay this amount to that person. This is the address it must go to. This is the amount, and here's my signature. Now that signature is your private key. So it's very important now that that becomes the transaction. But what Bitcoin Core decided to do was separate the signature from the transaction, because the signature was taking up quite a bit of space on the transaction. So if they could separate the signature, then they could put the transaction into the block, and they could chuck away the signature, and now we'd have a much smaller transaction. We could put more into the block. So this was a radical change. Now that is a crucial and a change that is going to be their ultimate demise. It's going to ultimately destroy BTC. Because, first of all, digital signatures are very well understood in law today. You can actually have a PDF or something, and you can digitally sign it, and that can be accepted in a court. Digital signatures, they say, if you take a digital signature, you embed it into the document, and it becomes one thing, that can be admissible in court. By separating the signature, what they've done is they've now created a payment system where you can never prove that you are actually the person who signed that transaction. There's no legal recourse. Now, I know it might sound at this stage, but we're just thinking about it as money. So if I get my money, I don't care about the signature. But if we're going to be looking at Bitcoin as a global payment system that is going to be, businesses are going to be built upon, we need to make sure that we can prove who paid what to whom. Otherwise, it's not admissible in court, and then we can't have a functioning business.
Or a court case, I suppose.
Court case, you can't do it. I can never prove that let's say I bought some drugs, and they say, look, you bought some drugs, here's your address, paid it to. Sorry, my signature's not there.
Also, do you mean that if the government comes to me or to you, they say you made this transaction, you can say, no, that wasn't me?
Yes, that's one of the things they could do it as well. Or if you buy something from a company and you pay them, and then you say, look, I paid you for my goods, where's my goods? Sorry, you didn't pay us. I did, here's the transaction. All right, prove to me that it's your transaction. Where's your signature? So it absolutely destroys the economic model of how Bitcoin works. And it was a radical change that is going to make it not a global payment system that will be accepted by businesses around the world. This is going to be becoming more apparent in the future. Another thing is they've created another change which is called replace by fee. And simply put, all that means is that if I make a payment to you, before that gets confirmed into a block, because that's how transactions are settled, they go into a block. I can actually create a transaction to somebody else with a higher fee, and then that one will be accepted. So what it's done now is it means that I can't ever use Bitcoin BTC at a retailer because.
Sorry, have you tested this yourself?
Well, this is this is documented. It's in the technology. You can see it. It's one of the things about Bitcoin. So what it means it makes Bitcoin impossible to use at retail.
So just make this clear.
Sure.
If I make a transaction from my Ledger wallet or from my mobile wallet. The amount is deducted almost immediately. Right, but
it looks like it.
Yeah, at least it looks like it from the user interface. But then, I suppose if you're a developer, you can manipulate the code and make kind of double spend.
Yes, you don't have to be a developer. I mean, I could create a wallet that does that for you. So exactly, create a double spend. And that means now that you can't trust a payment unless it's been confirmed in a number of blocks, which means 20, 30 minutes later.
Oh, but then why do most exchanges or even most places now, they're accepting one confirmation per transaction?
Are they accepting one? It's usually a bit more than that. But anyway, one is fine. I mean, let's just talk about one. So let's say now I go into a shop and I want to go and buy something. And I pay them with Bitcoin. I'm not allowed to leave that shop until there's been one block. And of course, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, depending on how long it takes.
Yeah.
That's never going to work in retail. Retail is literally where I have to go in, I pay, and I leave.
Yeah.
So they've actually made Bitcoin impossible to use at a retail payment level. Yes, if you're buying something online, then the online merchant can wait for the confirmations and then release the goods later. But Bitcoin BTC has now been hobbled as a payment system. And they admit this because what they're saying now is that it's not money, it's gold. Which means that it doesn't matter if I send you gold and it takes an hour to get there. It's not a transaction.
As long as I get it.
As long as you get it, And so they're saying that Bitcoin is now becoming gold, and we're going to create new technology like Lightning where we can do transactions on top.
Okay.
So these were changes that I was not happy with. I didn't want Bitcoin to be a gold system. There's no such thing as digital gold. It has to be useful for it to have value.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, it is useful. It allows me to keep it and no one can take it away from me and I can send it across the sea. You're going to need, if you want your cryptocurrency to succeed and to become valuable, it has to be used. It has to be used all the time. Buying things, here and there. So this was a radical change that BTC made, and I just didn't see that being a successful change. And I said, at that stage, when BCH, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin Core split, for me it was clear. And now I have to, unfortunately, we have to change the ticker symbol, and we have to roll back that code. And then I was on Bitcoin Cash. But then Bitcoin Cash did the same thing. You see, the people who were most prominent in Bitcoin Cash, like Roger Ver and so on, they now have, their ideology is to create these online marketplaces that allow people to buy and sell without being shut down. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe that we need to, that Bitcoin is going to become something that allows for online marketplaces that are anonymous. It can exist, but there's no way that a regulator will ever allow that. And to me, the way I see the world is that if I want something to succeed, no matter how much I disagree with my government and my regulators, I can't work around them.
Exactly.
I have to unfortunately follow the rules. If I don't like the rules, I have to move to a different country. So the only way I see Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency succeeding is if it follows the rules. Right. And right now, of course, we don't have specific regulations around cryptocurrency, but we certainly have regulations about currency. And if we're going to be treating Bitcoin as a currency, we better make sure that we follow the rules of the country. And that means allowing businesses enforcing know your customer rules. So if you transact with me, I have to know your name and so on.
Yeah.
Doing anti-money laundering. So that means if I see suspicious transactions, reporting that to the government. Allowing tax auditors to come in and view all my transactions and make sure that I'm not putting money here and there.
Yeah.
And remember, auditors love Bitcoin because it's public.
But then, getting back to the point you said about double spending. If what you said is absolutely true, why haven't I heard of any cases where people are like, okay, I was meant to receive Bitcoin and now it's been, I haven't received it?
Well, because most people when they receive Bitcoin don't expect it to be there instantly. Normally,
no, but I'm saying to actually have a case where you didn't receive the Bitcoin that you were meant to because you got a fake transaction.
Yes. The reason for that, and I'm sure there have been people, but the reason largely for that is because nobody accepts what are called zero confirmation transactions on Bitcoin. In other words, people will only accept it until they have at least one, if you say so, or two or three or more. So
actually, I do OTC trading, and I know a lot of people who do so worldwide. And how it works is that as long as you send, if they get a notification there, that
well, that's their decision. That's a business decision, and they haven't been defrauded yet. But it doesn't mean that they can't be or won't be. So at this stage, of course, the issue here isn't so much that it's becoming this big problem. It just means that it stops us from having Bitcoin be as functional as we would like it to be.
And trustworthy as well.
Trustworthy. Centbee is an SV wallet, and we do accept zero confirmation. So you can I can send you Bitcoin right now, and immediately you can go and spend it. And then a retailer can immediately go and accept that as well. Because in the way Bitcoin works, the original Bitcoin, there is no such thing as replaced by fee.
Yeah.
So you can now trust that if a miner has seen it, it's probably going to go into a block and it's probably going to get mined.
Is there any logic to Bitcoin Core refusing to increase the block size and keeping it 1 megabyte?
There's no logic. You see, they what they want to do is they believe that Bitcoin needs to be maximally decentralized. In other words, that it's not enough that a few companies, a few individuals out there are holding the mining network together. They think that everybody should be able to run a node, and that's not a mining node. That's just what they call a validating node. Because unless you have the blockchain on your computer, you can't trust anybody's payments unless your node says so. Because if I have to now go and ask you, did I get paid? In other words, a block explorer. If I go to the block explorer and I want to see, I have to trust the block explorer. What if they're lying to me? So Bitcoin Core have this idea that we need to create a world where people can all validate their own transactions. Now, that Bitcoin Core community is developer driven. They're not business driven. They are, in fact, openly hostile to business.
Yeah.
They don't like the fact that BitPay and Coinbase and all these guys exist, so they want to have this world where we all have our own nodes, Raspberry Pis sitting in our bedroom. We can all validate each other's transactions. It doesn't matter how long payments take because we're going to be using Lightning Network. They don't actually see a world where this becomes a commercial thing. And again, this is only going to succeed in growing value if it becomes commercial, if it becomes accepted by government, taxed by authorities, and businesses get involved. So this is now the thing that is now holding them back. They are insisting that we have this 1 megabyte cap and move things to a second layer, which doesn't work yet. So, there's a lot of faith they're putting into that second layer, which will solve all their problems, because Bitcoin, as it exists today, can't solve the problems that they want. As soon as Bitcoin becomes popular again, if it does ever again, you're going to see slow transaction speeds, you're going to see high fees. Nobody's going to want to use that.
All right. So, this is very interesting. So, if you look at Bitcoin SV, does it solve the problems that you think Bitcoin has, or is it because do you know Craig Wright in a personal way?
I do.
Is it?
Yes,
Okay.
I was with him last week.
So do you think there's any bias on you on this?
Well, the reason why I know him now and I approached him when I wanted funding for Centbee is because he believed what I believed. I believe that Bitcoin works the way it was originally designed, and I wanted him because he was clearly an advocate for the original Bitcoin. And, I don't want an investor that is going to just give me money. Money is just a small part of it. He has so much insight and also so much intellectual property that he's been creating that will benefit the industry as a whole. And I'm very keen to support him in that. He is, as I said, I believe he is Satoshi Nakamoto. But he's not just this one-hit wonder. He is a phenomenal brain, and he is going to prove, if Bitcoin succeeds, ultimately, if this blockchain world and Bitcoin actually goes somewhere, he's going to become acknowledged as one of the great inventors of our century. So, as to the bias, yes, the bias was because I believed in Bitcoin. Now, are there problems with Bitcoin? According to the way the original white paper was constructed, it's not a detailed specification for how Bitcoin should work.
Right.
All it is a basic set of rules about how the system should work. So in other words, miners should collect transactions, and they should, through proof of work, put transactions into blocks. They should broadcast their proofs. This is how Bitcoin is described in the white paper. It's a chain of digital signatures. By the way, that's even described in the white paper. That it's a chain of digital signatures and so on. So it's not a technical specification onto how to build a Bitcoin operation. It's just the ground rules. It's like it's saying in a gathering like this. These are the rules. The bathrooms are over there. That's where you have to go to the bathroom. Yeah. No smoking. please greet everybody in the place
morning.
and make sure to clean up your glasses when you're finished.
Yeah.
So those are the rules. How you come here, what you're wearing, how when you go to the bathroom, how you greet people, where you say what up, or you say hello, how are you doing? That's not defined in the spec. So Bitcoin was a very basic thing, actually. It was just a basic set of rules on how this should work, and it was very carefully thought out as well. By the way, it wasn't just stuff that wasn't significant. Of course, the ideas that what he brought together, the proof of work and the blockchain itself and so on. Those are very, very interesting, novel ideas for the problem of how to create a decentralized network. So that was very smart in its own right, but it wasn't prescriptive on how to build a Bitcoin network.
Yeah.
So what we have now is we have in Bitcoin companies who are trying to improve how miners work, how to propagate data across the network efficiently, how to effectively index data in the blockchain, how to create effective payment protocols. Mm-hmm. So all that is a field that is wide open for innovation and development.
Yeah.
But the ground rules have been set in stone. And in fact, Satoshi Nakamoto even said, when 0.1 was released, it was set in stone. And that means we can now forget about protocol, and we can start building this new world.
Right.
Now remember, the internet is exactly the same thing. Because a lot of people will argue, what? You can't have a protocol that's set in stone.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens if a new idea comes along? The internet is a protocol that is set in stone. That TCP/IP protocol. The innovation happens on top of that. In terms of how web services, networks, and all these things, people can be free to do whatever they like as long as they follow the rules of the internet protocol. And if they follow the rules of the internet protocol, we can all interoperate. We can all work together. We can all transfer information and so on. So this is what we needed in a Bitcoin world. We needed the ground rules where we could then be able to now build this new world of cryptocurrency payments, supply chains, all these things that you hear about in these blockchain conferences. Digital assets, securities, all that kind of stuff can be built on top of that protocol. But unfortunately, what's been happening over the last 10 years is people are thinking, wait, I can build a better protocol. Hang on, let's try and adopt the protocol. Let's change the protocol. BTC did exactly the same thing. Let's find the best protocol. Let's make the best protocol. So we're having all these protocol wars, and we're not even starting to build this world.
Absolutely.
So it's very frustrating. But Bitcoin SV is back to its roots.
Oh, so you think Bitcoin SV to the moon?
It's
and you don't hold any BTC anymore.
No, I don't hold any BTC.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I sold it all. Yes. When it comes to the moon, now let's talk about the moon. This has now been something that gets everybody excited and invest, and it's not going to be that easy. I guess what you could do in this case is you could speculate and you could buy a bit here, and maybe you could do well. I think it's not a great thing for you to think about investing in coins and becoming rich.
Of course.
I think if you have, and you don't have to have any particular skill. You don't have to be a software engineer. You don't have to be anything. You can be whatever you are. The real value in this is building on top of it. Like for example, you have a podcast and so on. So you're using the internet to build a business and to build value and to acquire your followers and to somehow monetize them and so on. So your wealth is not coming from you investing in a cryptocurrency, in let's say a browser stock or something. What you should be doing and what people should be doing is thinking, okay, we've now got a new system here, a new platform, a new world. What can I do in this world to now add value and bring value to people? And that is where the wealth that you generate will come from.
Right.
Building a business, educating people. What you're doing right now, you're educating people. That's what you should be trying to do. Of course, if there is a cryptocurrency that becomes very well used, of course it'll go up in value. We do have something that has fixed supply. So yes, we all are at that lucky stage and early stage of this development where if we make the right choices, we could do well, as people have done over the last few years. But I would hope that we don't think like that. We don't think about what should I invest in, what should I invest in. How can I add value? How can I make let's say I do invest in Bitcoin SV. It's not going to get expensive on its own. It's not going to go up in value on its own. I've got to make it. Absolutely. I've got to try and make a SV the most valuable coin in the world if I'm invested in it. Sitting back, now this is a thing about BTC. They have this hodl mentality.
Yeah.
They're like, buy hodl. Sit back. Wait for it, guys. Halving. 2020 halving.
Yeah, logically, 2020 halving. Logically, it doesn't make sense. If we're all buying hodl, then what?
Yes, halving. 2020 halving.
Yeah, logically,
2020 halving.
Logically, it doesn't make sense. If we're all buying hodl, then what?
Yes. Oh, we're holding. Yeah. Don't sell. Don't sell. Don't use. It's like completely nuts. It's almost like they're advocating a world where you could buy something, you can sit on your butt, and then you'll become wealthy. And I mean, that's not the kind of world we're looking for. Mm-hmm. We want a world where people are inspired to build and to create and to create that world that we want. If you want BTC, if you're holding a Bitcoin core, go out and be an advocate. Build something around it. Make it valuable for people.
Yeah. So one thing, lastly, we can talk about is, Bitcoin has this thing around it about financial inclusion.
Yes.
Right. And I grew up in Africa as well. We know the problems that we have. South Africa maybe has a lot more better solutions. But for others in other countries that are stifled, I see most countries in Africa have 30% bank account penetration rate.
Sure. Well, in Zim, it's I think 98% of people are using things like M-Pesa and EcoCash.
Exactly. So when we talk about, there is a point for people who talk about, we want a completely decentralized form of this thing. Because now I can see that it's already starting to change when regulators are coming in and trying to make things work. The problem is they're not helping the small guy now. I feel like it's going towards to protect the wealthy already anyway, at this point. What are your thoughts to that? Like, if things like KYC, which already, I know it has a point, it has a place, but already it caters to the people that are already at a better space.
Sure.
If you don't have
documented,
you're not documented. What does that help you with?
Yes.
So I feel like they're limiting financial access to those who don't have it.
Yes, that's true. Of course, when it comes to financial inclusion, that is exactly what drove me into Bitcoin in the first place. Seeing the problems in Zim, seeing even problems here, although South Africa, we seem to have a financial system that is, fairly robust and so on. But of course, my whole focus is financial inclusion. I want to create a world where people can use Bitcoin, people who don't have access to traditional payment systems and so on. And that is my entire focus. That is what gets me up in the morning. Now, there are going to be barriers to entry in the interim, of course. The first barrier to entry, of course, right now is how do you acquire these things? We've got a product that we're about to launch now where people can go and buy Bitcoin at a retailer. So we're hoping to cover that side of things. But once you've got it, it's not enough just to have it. You need to have a place where you can spend it.
Yeah.
So we're building right now a whole lot of open source technology where payment merchants and retailers can actually accept Bitcoin as payment. So that's going to hopefully allow people to buy and sell. Of course, it's not going to solve the issue about undocumented people and so on. But unfortunately, those are the kinds of hurdles we have to go through because it is, obligated, by us to follow whatever the regulations are, and they are, becoming more, so that we have to enforce, KYC and so on. At the moment, when you buy a voucher, you have to put your first name, your surname, and your ID number in. And that, of course, is going to restrict people who don't have that information. So, we would... but once you've got Bitcoin, by the way, then you're free to do whatever you like. You can send it to anybody. And another service we're about to go live on is a cross-border remittance solution. So we're trying to bring the costs down. People who are working in South Africa and sending money across border. So there's certainly going to be hurdles. Trying to find ways for people to get Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, and spend Bitcoin, use it. We are working so closely with our regulators to try and figure out those regulatory hurdles and to try and iron them out. Luckily, Bitcoin isn't considered money, so we don't have the same requirements, in terms of deposit taking and so on. So we have less hurdles than another financial institution. But this is all part of the journey. It's not a solution that is going to instantly work everywhere. And it's going to take entrepreneurs like yourself, myself, to try and bring this into the world and make it accessible.
And for, say, for you, Bankymoon, I know what you guys do. You work with some of the
Centbee, actually. Mostly now, I'm mostly involved in Centbee.
Also, okay. So
yes.
When you speak to these regulators,
yes.
What are their interests? Do they actually ever think of financial inclusion as a thing,
yes.
or are they just trying to protect the wealthy all the time?
Well,
because it feels like that's what they do.
It's not that they want to protect the wealthy. That's not how it is. And but what they do obviously have is a mandate to stop things like money laundering and exchange controls. They don't want money leaving the country and so on. So they've got those sorts of issues. Those are the big ones. Money laundering and tax evasion and so on. So it's not that they're trying to protect the wealthy. I mean, if you were to go to any regulator and say that, they'd be very insulted, and they're trying to say, no, we're trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to make a world a better place, why don't you ever think about those who don't have,
yes.
to get included in the system?
They certainly do. I can sure they do.
Money laundering was there before Bitcoin,
right?
And it's still there.
Yes.
Most of money laundering isn't done with Bitcoin. It's still
true.
With fiat currency.
No, you're right. So regulators are not trying to protect the wealthy. They're not trying to ruin our fund. They have their own agenda. They're trying to protect their currency, and talking about central banks right now. So they want to make sure that that if there are any backdoors for criminals, then that they get those backdoors closed. And of course, they're interested in financial inclusion. That's why when we are with them, we often give them that whole story about we're trying to bring financial inclusion, we're trying to reduce the cost of cross-border remittance and so on. And that they're very open to, and that helps our case. So I can't speak for all regulators around the world. Obviously they're different, but ours are good. We have really good regulators, people who are really intelligent, and also they do want to help South Africans. It's funny, when you think of a central bank, you think of a private bank. You think of guys who just want to make money.
Yeah.
But central bankers are government, and no matter what you think of government, everybody in government thinks they're making the country a better place. They all want to make the country a better place. When you're in government, you might be wrong. You might be a socialist or something. I'm anti-socialist. I don't know if you're a socialist, but you might have the wrong ideas about economics, or politics. But it's not coming from a place of evil. I'm talking generally here.
Yeah.
It comes from their opinions on how to make the world a better place. And they might be completely wrong. They might be missing the point. But at least that's their motivation. And when it comes to regulators, that's a government thing.
But that the worst people. I don't know who say that the worst people are the bad people with. The good people with bad intentions. Yes. Without knowing it. Yes. Because everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. Sure. Even Hitler thought he was doing the right thing.
That's true. Exactly. So I guess what you're going to hope is that the motivations are good, and that you educate them enough so they make those right decisions. And I've been working very hard to try that. To educate them and show them that Bitcoin is not the scary money laundering drug you buy and you tool. It's transparent. It can help people. It can be audited. It can be taxed. And I'm sure we are making progress.
Because I still see articles about Bitcoin is a scam kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I understand in Africa right now. There's a lot of scam-like things going on.
Most cryptocurrencies are scams.
Not only cryptocurrencies, but things that are seemingly they seem like cryptocurrencies.
Ponzi schemes.
Exactly, but they're easy to understand to people because they tell them, give us money, we'll give you 5% per month.
Yes,
this kind of thing.
And that's what regulators are trying to stop.
Right.
So anyway, I think I'm very optimistic about our country, and very optimistic about the technology. And I'm sure that in a few years' time, I don't know how long it'll take, but it's not going to be tomorrow. Things will settle down, and then we'll see real progress.
Thanks for your time, and I appreciate how you broke down Bitcoin, SV, and Core. Where all these. I think I'll take some time to actually think about it and see how I can place myself in the market.
Definitely. Look into Bitcoin SV.
I think it's more like a fanboy thing where everybody's just like, screw Bitcoin, fuck Bitcoin, Bitcoin SV, or whatever Bitcoin is. It just have to be Bitcoin Core is the only Bitcoin.
Right.
So it's worth thinking about. Once you understand what's going on behind the scenes. So
absolutely,
that's great. So Centbee, how can people sign up right now? Is that you say they get free Bitcoin?
We were running a campaign for people who downloaded Centbee to get free coins. We don't have that running at the moment, but we will run it in the future over and over again. We call it our honey rewards.
Yeah.
And so if they download Centbee, check it out. It's improving, and we're soon going to launch our vouchers, and you can go buy a Bitcoin SV at a retailer and come along for the ride.
Awesome. Anything lastly you want to share?
No, but thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Awesome. Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you quickly. If you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive.